大家好, I'm Nathan Rich, aka 火锅大王. You know, one of the things that's strange about being a foreigner who loves China is, when I go to the West, I become an unofficial spokesman for China. I become the guy who has to answer every question and accusation about China. And there are usually a lot of questions and accusations. There are a few big ones out there, that's for sure. And if you've searched my comments on YouTube or elsewhere, you may find a certain anti-China element in them. I don't delete comments for disagreeing with me, except in cases of extreme name-calling or hate. And one amusing thing they sometimes say is that I'm too scared to talk about certain subjects, or that I would never because my alleged secret behind-the-scenes masters would never let me. Conspiracy theories are very popular on the internet these days. I've had knives pulled on me. I've been jumped and beaten. I've been shot at with the intention to kill. I was hit in the head with a metal pole. I've died and been resuscitated. I was abandoned by my entire family, who later attacked me publicly. I was in a major motorcycle accident. Raised with no father, my mother has also passed away. The rest of my family are victims of a UFO cult. I spent 4 years in that cult's punishment boarding school as a kid. I've eaten out of trash cans, and I've genuinely attempted suicide multiple times in my younger days. And after all that, I managed to pick myself up and slowly climb the ladder with no friends or family. I eventually became a millionaire through hard work, investment, and dedication. I fought the negative pressure often found in life, and for the most part, I succeeded in stabilizing my life. I traveled the world and eventually settled on living in China, a country I personally love. To my surprise, many people have a problem with that. What a strange world. I will always be damaged from my past, but I look to the future every day. You can hear the bullet points of my life by watching the 2 videos I made outlining the story. And while there will always be hatred, especially on the internet, it will never affect me. And today, I'd like to share with you how I feel about the situation in Xinjiang. If you want to know the history of Xinjiang, you'll need to watch my Epic China series, which will touch on it. Suffice to say, Xinjiang has always been an area of cultural importance. For thousands of years, it's taken turns as part of China proper, de facto China, tributary, etc. It's one of the parts of China most distinct and revered, but it's also been a hotbed of separatism and violence in the past. I remember when I first came to China in 2012, hearing Xinjiang was a dangerous place to be. There had been terrorism in the area a long time, and just months before I came, the 2011 Kashgar attacks took place. 2 days of terrorism with dozens of dead and injured from bombs, trucks, car bombs, knives, and gunshots. The attackers were jihadists, presumably bent on breaking Xinjiang off from China and making a Sharia state. This kind of violence is not normal in China outside of Xinjiang, and it shouldn't be normal anywhere. Then, in 2014, more bombing and knife attacks. At least 260 dead or injured in multiple stabbings, shootings, bombings. Xinjiang's situation was getting worse. To put this into perspective, let's imagine this unfolding in the West. Imagine, if you would, a United States in a parallel universe. Everything's exactly the same, except Libya is no longer in the Middle East. It's now a county in the middle of Texas. And terrorism throughout the rest of the country is basically entirely gone. So the U.S. has a region in it that is breeding terrorism. United States citizens are being killed. What would the U.S. do? Better yet, what should it do? Think about that for a moment. What is the solution to this problem? Not as simple as it seems, is it? Maybe we can start by how the U.S. currently deals with terrorism. You know, in this world. These are the steps the United States takes against terrorism today. Illegally kidnap suspects or people who may know suspects, even if they're in another country. Torture them. Give them no trial or hope of trial or any legal process. Tell their family nothing. If they cause problems, kidnap, kill, or imprison them too. Imprison the suspects and or their families for as long as necessary or desired. Airstrike their villages, towns, and cities. When the public finds out, lie about it. Lie about why the U.S. must invade their country. Invade their country. Liberate their country of natural resources. Install a puppet state and or state leadership to allow continued exploitation. Pressure the media to make few mentions about it and instead to focus on other things. Repeat with the next operation. That way, when a study comes out, for example, in 2018, showing that the US-led war on terror has killed over 500,000 people in 3 countries alone, few will even know that it happened. That's the United States' solution to terrorism. Kidnap, torture, kill, invade, lie, steal, silence, repeat. None of this is conspiratorial. All of it is completely well-known, well-documented public information. This is not a theory. I'm just literally telling you what the US's method of dealing with terrorism is. And for the sake of this video, I won't even get into specifically judging these actions. We will keep it scientific. This is the standard we're comparing it to. So now we've got the Xinjiang part of China, which is a terrorist-producing area. So what should China do about it? Airstrikes? Well, I'm serious. You tell me. What should China do about the terrorism? Put signs up telling people terrorism's illegal? They tried that. Have audio recordings telling people not to become terrorists? That terrorism's illegal? They tried that too. Increased police presence? Tried that. Martial law? Tried that. Raise the quality of life? Raise the standard of living? They've been doing that a long time. So what? What is the solution? Anyone? Yeah, that's what I thought. This is the type of problem that has no nice answers. It has no answer that everyone will be happy about. Because terrorism doesn't breed niceness. It doesn't breed good answers. It breeds terror and pain and suffering. Part of what the US does in its response to terrorism can be justified. Hell, many think it can all be justified, clearly. But what about in China? Now, I've not been to Xinjiang yet, and I don't have any special knowledge. I don't know anything other than what I've researched and what's been reported, and a lot of rumors that I hear coming from my American friends. To be clear, if there are violations of human rights here and there, I condemn them. But I recognize in any major area there are bound to be a few. If there are institutionalized heinous crimes, then I condemn those even more. All people deserve some basic rights. But those things are for the most part far from being proven. When we focus on what we have actually proven and compare it to what some people out there think, we come up against true conspiracy theories. In the West, the people I talk to seem to think China is exterminating all Muslims. When I watch the news or read news articles, the impression I get is that China is basically doing an ethnic cleansing against the Uyghurs. China just hates Muslims for some reason and wants them all to become atheists or something. They never talk about the fact that there are Muslims in literally every single province of China. The first time I heard that, I noted that I was working with a Chinese Christian and a Chinese Muslim. Something seemed off. Another thing they say is there are millions of Uyghurs all being brainwashed and their culture being removed, something of that nature. I remember a while ago I read an article that gave me the impression the entire Xinjiang terrorism situation was just all an excuse to modernize Xinjiang for the Belt and Road Initiative. You know, the new Silk Road. It goes to show you that the way things are reported is actually pretty important. Because from everything I know about Chinese people in China, I can bet with you that none of these are correct. First of all, Chinese people don't hate Muslims. I learned that really soon after coming to China. In Xi'an, I walked Muslim street and found not hatred and violence, not animosity and phobias. No, I found a Muslim street. There was no negative anything. I've been back several times over the years, and it's just always been that way. In fact, I personally have never met any Chinese people who are even slightly outwardly negative towards Islam, though I'm sure some exist somewhere. In fact, one of the first things you find out when you come to China is how many ethnicities there are here. It's actually a point of pride. Think about that. Chinese people in general don't really care what you believe in. They care more about what you do. If you're a Jew who comes to China, you may get asked questions like, is it true that you don't eat meat and drink milk at the same time? But you almost certainly won't be asked a question like, why do you think God is real? There are always exceptions to everything, but in general, like I said, the societal energy in China is that people really don't care what you believe. It's what you do that's important. So whenever I hear this strange narrative that China is somehow going after Muslims or Islam, I immediately know it's from someone who doesn't understand China or is trying deliberately to mislead. But what about ethnic cleansing? I mean, you probably heard Uyghurs are being taught Mandarin and being made to say they love China or something and whatever. What sounds like some kind of accelerated assimilation program or something, right? As far as I understand it, the Chinese government is reacting not to Muslims or Islam, not to Uyghurs or Xinjiang. They're reacting to terrorism that has been nonstop for decades. And the way they've decided to deal with the situation is by assimilation. They want the entire area safe and terrorism-free. And so they've taken to de-indoctrination and de-escalation of extremist beliefs in the only way that they know how. That means doing whatever it takes to root out the fundamentalist movement within. Are they mandatory assimilation facilities? What are they? I don't really know the answer to that. But I do know there aren't terrorist attacks anymore. I know at the very least, for the time being, that part seems to be working. And I'm not an extreme individualist, but I do value individual rights. That part of me really doesn't like the idea of people being locked up or detained for things they haven't directly done. But what I value even more than the right not to be detained is the right not to be murdered by terrorists. Which do you think is more valuable? So while China's solution is abrasive and certainly isn't perfect, I struggle to think of what a better solution would be. And that's one thing I've learned about politics. It's easy to condemn and hard to actually solve problems. If I were in charge of the Xinjiang situation, would I just undo everything and ignore the violence? Could I sleep at night after another few hundred people killed? It's easy to disagree based on the principle of individualism. That much I admit. But you know what's not easy? Ending terrorism without using airstrikes. Ending the deaths without the war. Death and destruction that countries like the US employ. That's hard. That's a job I don't envy. That's what I tell people when they ask me about Xinjiang. I don't much like what's happening. It's a bad situation. But I haven't yet heard a better plan than the one happening now. And before I go, let me make one thing perfectly clear. I condemn all violence, not in self-defense, with, of course, some very limited exceptions. I condemn all torture and mistreatment of people. I don't condone hatred, nor violence, nor terror. I never condone killing or violence. That's why I can't condone the United States' process for dealing with terrorism. It's much, much too bloody. And while I don't like the idea of citizens detained on the grounds that they might condone or support terrorism, I don't know of a single idea better than what China is doing to solve its very tough terrorism problem. Do you? If you're serious and you really believe you have a better way to solve the problem without further mass killings of innocents by lunatic terrorists, let me know. Until then, all I can do is hope for peace to last, for terrorism to end, and the entire Xinjiang situation to clear up. Oh, and thank the heavens that China isn't doing things the American way, because that would be truly horrific. I'm sure there are abuses and other mistakes that have been made, and I'm against those. I think we all are. But even if those happened 100 times as often, it would pale in comparison to the extremely conservative estimate of 500,000 killed in America's war on terror. So there. Now you know what I think about Xinjiang. It's the type of thing no one likes. But that doesn't necessarily mean it's wrong. It just means no one likes it, and it needs to be resolved. Soon, I'll start talking about other things I'm totally too scared to talk about. Thanks, everybody. See you soon.